Morning, nice to have you on board. Sunday Times had a front page story yesterday. The headline was Fear and Favours at Faulty Towers. And it was all about what they call the looting spree at the SABC. Now, it also mentions forensic reports and board minutes and internal correspondence that it has obtained. And it claims that the SABC agreed to give the Gupta's New Age newspaper free exposure worth millions on Morning Live and to flood Auckland Park with thousands of papers that the staff apparently don't want, and also to pay the paper for advertorials. Well, on the line, we've got the CEO of New Age, that's Nazeem Howa. And Nazeem, nice talking to you, and good morning.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me on the program.
What's your reaction to the allegations?
First off, I'm very disappointed that Stefan Hofstad has not taken up the option to be live with me on the program. But I'm really quite regretful of the allegations. Regretful in the sense that I'm a veteran of 30 years in the media industry, and I've never seen such poor journalism in my life. To call this an investigation is to insult the word investigation, John.
In what way? I mean, it's suggesting that there's an unholy alliance between you and the SABC. For example, do you have that business breakfast that's sponsored by you? Do you pay for that, Nazeem?
Certainly, John. We have the business briefing. In fact, I'm missing one at the moment.
Oh, sorry.
The chairman of the AU.
Yeah.
We're doing a farewell business briefing with the chairman of the AU. But the business briefings, let me give you some context, because when I look at the press code, it talks about the need for context in stories. The business briefings was a 6-month negotiation between myself and the various CEOs at the SABC, Lulama herself as well as Phil Molefe. That discussion went through several rounds of negotiation. It means at the end of the day that we both contribute to what we believe is a project that is in the interests of South Africa, much like your Lead Essay project, which is done jointly between yourselves and independent newspapers, between two mediums. So we went to the SABC with an idea of saying, let's do this business briefing. We suggested to the SABC that we could do it jointly as a strategic alliance because it works best between print and online. The SABC would take care of the broadcast elements of the product. We take care of the venue, the guests, and the food, the entertainment, everything else that goes with it. From our side, we would also run advertisements 10 days ahead of the program, which the SABC has some marketing presence in. We would run a full-page story before the breakfast, where we would also refer people to the programming, and we'd do 2 pages after the breakfast, which the SABC would have some.
So it's a joint venture, and you claim both sides get something out of it. It's a win-win situation.
It's a both sides, and anybody who did the least bit of investigation around what's in the public domain right now would know that.
And the deal with the SABC about the newspapers?
The deal with the newspapers, let me explain that one to you, and it's a very interesting one. Again, when I talk about context, I would expect the the Sunday Times, which has vested interest, to declare how many copies it has in that building right now. And I would make a bet with you today, John, that they will have many, many more copies than New Age would have. We were sampling 3 copies into the building, 2,000 copies a day. At some point, I said to the CEO of the SABC, this cannot go on forever. We agreed on a pilot for 1 month, and if I could get sufficient take-up from their departments to continue at 1,000, I would continue at 1,000. Unfortunately, I didn't get that because the deal was that the department had to find budget to cover that cost. Now the Sunday Times talks about thousands of copies. There was 1,000 copies that they paid for 1 month. For the rest, it's been 190 copies.
I've got an SMS here. Sorry to interrupt, Nazeem. It says Eskom has also signed a contract with New Age for 2,000 copies a day, but employees have been refused to order other newspapers. This is pure corruption. Do you have a deal with Eskom as well?
We have a deal with Eskom, and I wouldn't be able to answer whether they don't get others. From my time at Independent, I know that they do get they get the Star every day.
And do you receive money to run advertorials?
So let me talk about the advertorials. 2 half-page ads were placed in the New Age in March 2011, long before the business briefings. So again, it's absolute nonsense from the Sunday Times. If Stefan had taken the trouble to ask me to comment on that, I could have clarified it. But I think the Sunday Times lives on a diet of half-truth and innuendos and chooses to publish that as fact.
Didn't they get right of reply from you? I think you were quoted in the article, Nazeem.
I was asked 2 questions. I was given right of reply on 1. The second question was around the business briefings. And my response to Stefan was the business relationship between SABC and TNA is governed by contracts. And we are surprised by a competitor asking for details of such a key strategic alliance.
All right. Are you going to reply? You came to us for right of reply. Presumably you'll have something in the newspaper?
We've given up on the Sunday Times. The Sunday Times, as a competitor, chooses not to give us a right of reply. I think the difficulty for them is that New Age, now 22 months old, is starting to make inroads into the market.
Let's just leave you there. Stay there, Nazeem, because we do have one of the journalists who wrote the article. It's Stephen Hofstadter, a reporter at the Sunday Times. Stephen, why won't you come on and debate with Nazeem? Good morning to you.
Good morning. I didn't realize I was coming on to debate with him, but that's no problem.
No. We asked both parties, and I was told that you did not want to come on with Nazeem, but Nazeem was prepared to come on with you.
I was asked whether I'd like to come on the show to respond to Nazeem. First, I said, sure, no problem. Later, I was asked whether I'd like to debate with him. I said, well, I didn't see any point in us debating it over the air, but if he chooses to debate it over the air, that's absolutely fine with me.
Okay, we put him on first because he asked for right of reply. You heard what he had to say. He's accused you of very poor journalism. What do you say, Stefan? It was a very interesting article, reading it, which is the reason we've taken it. How do you reply to what he said?
Well, I think the first thing we need to understand is this is not about one competitor taking a dig at another. New Age newspaper is owned by the Guptas, and the Guptas are known benefactors of the president. The SABC is a public broadcaster, which is part-funded by taxpayers, and therefore any sweetheart deal between a paper that is clearly sympathetic to the president and the public broadcaster is a matter of public concern. So, to dress everything up as a commercial dispute between two rivals, I think is missing the point. But anyway, just to get to the substantive issues, the issue of right to reply, Nazeem read his reply to my questions for details of what exactly the SABC got in return for, the free airtime, having its logo displayed on prime time. And you heard his reply. He refused to disclose it. I'm not sure what more investigation could be done into that. When it comes to the issue of the newspapers, you see, the problem here is that he had a meeting, according to Shraudi Motswaneng, the chief operating officer. He said he met personally with Nazeem, and they discussed having 1,800 newspapers a day being delivered to the SABC offices. This was then a deal was then clinched for 1,000 newspapers a day, and several emails were then circulated to the logistics divisions to ask about this. And what these emails clearly show is that there was no needs analysis done before this deal was clinched. It was simply trying to impose on the staff. I mean, I could read you some of these emails. It's from
Stefan, just to interrupt. Surely the issue then is with the SABC, not with the New Age. Surely the New Age are just running a newspaper. Do you, for example, provide newspapers for the SABC?
Well, I mean, I'm not here to comment on what our newspaper sort of media and marketing and all the rest of the policies are. But I mean, they did supply us with some figures, and of course we do. We supply more newspapers to the SABC. So
what's the difference then? You're criticizing New Age, and I'm not on any side here, Stephen. I'm just curious to see the two newspapers having such a spat. What is the difference between you and the New Age?
I think the difference is very, very simple. The first thing is that Avusa has several titles. It's the Sowetan, it's the Times, the Sunday Times, and it has a far larger reach. So, there are obviously more papers that are going to be delivered. But I think the key issue here is that in the correspondence we have, it shows that the division said that they had no budget for these newspapers and no need for these newspapers. In fact, they say currently only 25 papers for Auckland Park have been requested by divisions. What do we do with the rest of the papers? So this isn't really an issue about New Age. It's about the procurement processes at the SABC, where there was no needs analysis done, and then instructions were issued to the logistics divisions. I could read you a quote here. As previously instructed, logistics is to order the following numbers of newspapers, and then it lists 1,000 newspapers, dividing it up into the different regions. So really the issue isn't about New Age at all. It's about SABC's procurement policies.
All right. Well, can I bring Nazeem in there, Stephen? And I'm not trying to set up a fight or anything like that. All I want to do is try and get an area perhaps where there's some agreement. Are you happy with that, Stephen?
Yeah, sure. No
okay. Nazeem, do you accept then that there are questions that the SABC has to answer about its procurement of newspaper policy?
John, I can never assume to answer for the SABC. What I can say is that Stephen is trying to justify the indefensible right now. His story says, agreed to give the Gupta's New Age newspaper, that's on thousands of newspapers, staff don't want. He now admits that the email says we don't have budget for these newspapers. Thousands, it was never thousands. It was 1,000 for 1 month. There was never any attempt by us to force any number through. When the SABC said we want 190, we accepted it gracefully as the correct business decision.
Stephen, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, as I said, the issue was members of the SABC staff, and specifically the chief operating officer and his compliance officer, sending emails to their staff instructing them to take the newspapers, and the staff writing emails in reply saying we do not have a budget and we have not requested all these newspapers. In other words, there was no need for the newspapers.
Would that concern you, Nazeem, that the SABC seems to be trying to push the new age there amongst its staff?
Certainly not, John. Certainly not. I think in this country and in terms of our economic transformation of this country, there is much pressure on us having diversity of voices. And should the SABC, in its wisdom, believe that they need to provide different voices to its staff, good luck to them, and I would support that from them.
Just go over again your policy, because I remember you did have a policy that said you were going to be I can't remember the wording, sort of supportive of government, and this has led a lot of people to believe that somehow you're in bed with government. Explain your policy, Nazeem.
John, I'm very happy to do that. In terms of being supportive of government, it doesn't mean that we're never going to criticize government. But we have a tendency in South Africa to believe that everything government does is bad. We're going to try and find what is good and celebrate what is good without ignoring what is bad. But John, if I can just go back to the article for 1 minute.
Briefly, yeah?
When Stephen's publication runs a headline called Massive Looting at SABC Exposed and mentions me by name and the Gupta family by name, and when Stephen talks about benefactors, and when he links the Special Investigations Unit into the story, I want to challenge Stephen to provide us any information that we've done anything wrong or that there's been any benefit unduly received by myself or the family.
Stephen?
Yeah, I think the business breakfast is a classic example. Again, we spent a long time trying to really understand, just simply by asking the SABC, what do you get in return for this airtime? Very senior executives told us they were unhappy with the decision because really, at the end of the day, their money could have been better spent. They could have made a lot more money for that 45 minutes of airtime that New Age got exposure for. So there's, the figures we got, and I'm not an expert in broadcasting fees, but the figures we got were 18,000 Rand for 30 seconds.
All right. Okay, guys.
I think you missed the point.
All right, then.
That's 1.6 million.
Yeah, hold on a sec. Guys, I'm going to leave it here because of time. But do you agree, therefore, that there is a place in South Africa? You talk about a diversity, Nazeem, for a newspaper like the Sunday Times, which spends a lot of time having a fair dip at government and produces many stories, etc., and a newspaper that you've described your slightly different approach. Do we agree this is part of diversity of media, Nazeem? Last word?
John, I would agree with you 100% on condition that we practice good journalism. What the Sunday Times did was to accuse me of looting, a criminal charge. I am challenging Stephen to lay a criminal charge today.
Okay, Stephen, your answer to that?
Well, the answer is the same. If the SABC wasted 1.6 million Rand per program that they could have made, it would become fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Looting is not necessarily criminal, but it's about misspending public resources.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, both of you, and thank you for coming on together. Initially, as I say, Nazeem was very, very happy, and Stephen came on as well. Any reaction to that? People who've read the story, I'd be interested. Thank you.